I used to think Thanksgiving carried its own kind of stability, a rhythm you could trust even when the rest of the year drifted off course. That morning in Selwood, the house felt ordinary, in a way I hadn't felt in months. Recovering from the surgery had taken more out of me than I admitted, so preparing that turkey had become a small promise to myself. One thing done right. One tradition I could still hold steady. Brandon's place sat a few blocks from the river, a neighborhood full of renovated porches and tidy lawns. He wanted the holiday at his house that year, said it would be easier for everyone. I didn't mind. I'd handled the main dish, and brought it over early, set it in the oven myself. When the timer beeped, I walked over, pulled the door open, and felt something slide in my chest. A thin layer of frost clung to the meat, crusted along the wings. Steam should have risen off it. The skin looked wrong, too pale, too stiff. A frozen bird, not the fresh one I had seasoned back home. A handful of seconds passed before the realization settled. He had switched it. My turkey was gone. This sad, half-thawed thing had taken its place. No raised voice left my mouth. No demand for an explanation. Standing still became the safest choice. Years of working in emergency response taught me that movement wasn't always strength. Sometimes standing in place told you more than rushing in. Brandon laughed with a cousin in the living room. His wife hovered by the counter, kept her eyes away from the oven, and clutched a towel like she needed something to hold together. She glanced at me once, a quick dart of guilt she didn't bother hiding. That alone confirmed what I already knew. A few guests noticed the bird, or at least sensed something off. Conversations thinned, people shifted in their seats. Someone muttered, "Is it supposed to look like that?" Nobody pressed for answers. Politeness often worked like a wall, thin, brittle, but still enough to keep the truth from spilling across the room. The doctor had warned me about infections after surgery. Undercooked poultry wasn't a small risk. A part of me measured that quietly, more surprised by the lack of care than the act itself. He'd brought me food during recovery. He knew the limitations. He still made this choice. My knees felt unsteady, not from fear, but a kind of disbelief that settled deep. A simple meal had turned into a message one delivered without a single word. "I'm heading out," I finally said to no one in particular. Brandon nodded without pausing his story, as if I had announced something unimportant. His wife stepped aside, leaving a gap for me to walk through. The backyard offered a stretch of cold air where I could breathe. Not calm, not anger, just space. Leaning against the railing helped steady my hands until they stopped shaking. Nothing dramatic crossed my mind. No plan formed, just a slow, steady acceptance that something had changed and wouldn't return to what it used to be. The drive back to my place didn't last long yet. The moment the door shut behind me, my phone lit up with messages that carried more weight than they deserved. A cousin wrote that I had made Thanksgiving awkward for everyone. Another hinted that I'd lost my sense of humor with age. A former coworker chimed in, repeating some version of a story, already twisted out of shape. Every note landed the same way I had ruined the holiday. No one mentioned the turkey. They spoke as if I'd walked out for sport. A notification popped up from a public post someone from my son's in-laws had written. "Some folks don't know how to share a meal without making it about themselves." Underneath, a few people commented things like, "Over a bird" or "family drama again." It spread without effort. A small spark, but it found eager kindling. Scrolling through it only added a dull ache across my ribs. Years of stepping up, years of covering bills, years of showing up when others didn't. None of that made its way into the story. That's how gossip works. It trims away context until only accusation is left. Mail waited at the curb, so I walked out to get it. Marvin Cole, my neighbor for almost a decade, stood by his steps with a package in one hand. Our eyes met. Another person might have bombarded me with questions. Marvin simply asked, "You okay, no theatrics? No long stare. Just a simple question." My nod seemed to satisfy him, and he went back to his porch. Presence alone did more for me than any advice would have. Work at the high school the next morning didn't offer much cover. A custodian mentioned that he'd heard something about me storming out of Thanksgiving. A teacher joked that I must have reached my tolerance limit. Jokes like that aren't meant to hurt, but they find the bruised places anyway. Nobody asked what actually happened. Brandon stayed silent. The absence said more than words could. Stepping aside when people talk is a choice, but refusing to correct a lie is something else entirely. My mind kept replaying the scene at the oven, the frost clinging to the bird, the look on his wife's face. Should I leave it alone? Should I bring it up? For years, I'd chosen the path of peace. Back then, the pattern felt like patience. Now it felt more like surrender. By late afternoon, the guessing turned thin. The turkey receipts were still on the counter. Pulling them from the drawer took seconds. Date. Time. Clear. One thought followed close behind, sharp enough to hold its own. If he'd swapped the turkey, what else had he helped himself to? The old backyard camera usually picked up raccoons. That Thanksgiving morning it caught someone else. Brandon. Same jacket he wore at dinner. No hesitation. No knock. The footage ended every excuse I'd kept alive. He slipped through the back gate, crossed to the kitchen door, and walked out 10 minutes later with a shopping bag pulled tight around something he didn't want seen. The timestamp put him there long before he claimed he'd arrived. The clip didn't push anger. It just made things plain. This hadn't been a last-minute impulse. He'd planned it. Prepared. Decided my work didn't matter. Decided I didn't matter. My hand tightened around the phone. Let go. Sending the clip to anyone would only stir more noise. Confronting him. That always slid into the same script. I sank onto the couch arm and replayed the frame where he stood with his hand on my refrigerator door. No pause. No doubt. A memory surfaced. Tools I never got back. The gym membership he filled out under my name. All the little incursions I'd brushed aside. A message from my aunt popped up. "So you brought a frozen bird. Everyone's confused." No greeting. No space to answer. I muttered. Of course they are. Marvin's earlier glance crossed my thoughts. He hadn't tried to fix anything, hadn't taken anyone's side. Just watched. Sometimes that was the difference between chaos and a foothold. I replayed the clip one last time. Brandon opened my fridge, took the turkey, and walked out of frame. My thumb froze him mid-step. The room stayed still. The phone buzzed. Brandon's name lit the screen. A single line. "We can talk if you're ready to be reasonable." A dry breath escaped me. "Reasonable?" I repeated, steadying myself. The phone shut off with a small click. Before dawn, a message from an unknown number appeared. "You should check your house papers and retirement accounts." No greeting, no name. The certainty in it stayed with me while I dressed. Not fear, just a pressure at the base of the skull, tracing a line back to yesterday's footage and forward to something I hadn't uncovered yet. At the maintenance office, Ellen Ruiz stopped by to inspect emergency kits. She worked fast but kept glancing over. When she spoke, her tone tried too hard to sound offhand. "Heard someone say your son's been using your name for a few things." Probably nothing. The look she gave me contradicted every word. The warning fit too well with the text I'd woken up to. Old folders sat in the bottom cabinet. Years ago, when Brandon lost his job, I shifted a few assets into joint arrangements so he could keep afloat. Grief for my wife had made yes feel easier than no. Most documents seemed normal, but one page detailed representation rights I didn't remember approving. The signature was mine. The date landed in the week I'd been recovering from the heart procedure, barely coherent. My phone chimed again. "Brandon, don't blow the turkey thing out of proportion. You embarrassed me enough yesterday. Let it go." Short. Cold. No apology. The message treated my discovery like an offense against him. A calm settled in. The kind that doesn't leave room for debate. I photographed every page, copied the video, wrote notes in the small spiral notebook normally used for repair jobs. Questionable signature, early arrival, cloud access revoked. Checking the shared family archive confirmed another shift. My access had been removed. A denial message flashed when I tried to rejoin. Petty move, but pettiness usually reveals intent. They weren't avoiding conflict. They were closing ranks. The list grew. A pattern came into view. I'd mistaken endurance for peace. What I called harmony was just me absorbing impact while others rearranged the board. By lunch, the documents weighed down my bag. Moving through the afternoon felt off-kilter, as if the building's floors had shifted a fraction. Students rushed past. Teachers called out reminders. None of it reached me fully. The phone rang just as I stepped out of the grocery store. Brandon didn't waste time on greetings. "I need you to sign a quick authorization form," he said. "Just something small so the bank can process a transfer. It'll make things smoother." My grip tightened around the cart. "No. Send whatever you think I should look at, but I'm not signing anything today." A short pause followed, the kind that carries offense more than surprise. "You're being difficult?" he muttered, then cut the call without waiting for a response. The rest of the errands went by in a distracted haze. By the time I reached home, an email from him already waited in my inbox. This one ran longer, dressed in blame. He accused me of creating unnecessary problems, claimed I was refusing to support my own family, and copied half of his wife's relatives into the message. Every sentence aimed to paint me as the stubborn one, the obstacle in his life. Scrolling through it didn't spark anger. More a steady realization he was no longer hiding the contempt. It had moved out from the sidelines, now walking directly toward me without apology. Another email arrived from the bank. "A routine alert, recent activity on your shared account." My stomach dropped before I even opened it. The notice showed a withdrawal from the old joint account we'd once used during his unemployment. The amount wasn't huge, but I hadn't touched that account in years. The transaction had been approved by someone with legacy access. A cold sensation washed through me. He'd done it openly, without hesitation. That was the first direct hit, no disguise, no excuse, no attempt to soften the blow. Driving to the bank downtown took longer than expected. Traffic crawled each stop, giving me more time to replay the details. The branch lobby buzzed with its usual mid-afternoon pace. When my turn came, the teller listened carefully as I explained the unauthorized withdrawal. She typed something into her screen and nodded. "There's still an active access permission under Brandon Reeves," she said. "Left over from an older arrangement. That old arrangement had become a doorway he walked through whenever he pleased." "Remove it," I told her. She confirmed my ID, pulled up more screens, then said, "We can revoke all external permissions and reset every authorization linked to your profile. Once I hit confirm, only you will have the ability to approve changes." "Do it," I said. No hesitation this time, every single one. Watching her work brought a strange steadiness. Not satisfaction, just the certainty that a step needed to be taken, and I was finally taking it. She printed documents for me to sign. My pen moved across the page without a tremor. Leaving the counter, I resisted the urge to check my phone again. It didn't matter what Brandon would say. The access was gone. Actions, not explanations, had become the only language he responded to. So I chose that language. The sun had dropped lower by the time I reached the parking garage. The phone buzzed with another call, this time from a number belonging to one of his in-laws. The moment I answered, their voice came sharp and rehearsed. "What did you do to Brandon? He's upset. You embarrassed him. We heard you're making banking difficult when he's just trying to support his family. He took money from an account he wasn't supposed to touch." "That's not the point," the caller snapped. "You've made him lose face. I didn't bother arguing." "I'm hanging up." My tone stayed flat, offering no foothold for further debate. The call ended mid-sentence. Staying seated in the truck felt easier than starting the engine. Papers from the bank lay on the passenger seat. Reaching over, I grabbed my small notepad from the center console and added today's details. Each bullet point formed a simple record withdrawal email bank access, removed confrontation call. Listing them didn't make the situation heavier. If anything, the clarity helped. The pattern now stood in plain view: financial control, mixed with public shame and private manipulation. A triangle of pressure meant to corner me. The call reached me mid-morning while I was repairing a loose cabinet hinge in the science wing. The number belonged to the law office that had handled our estate planning years back. The attorney's assistant spoke first, then transferred me. When the attorney came on the line, his tone carried a careful edge. "Mr. Reeves, we received an inquiry about your representation rights in the old file. Someone asked whether you still had full authority over those documents." My hand tightened around the screwdriver. "Who called?" They didn't give a name. The questions were specific, though. "My guess is someone from your family?" He hesitated. "Perhaps your son. Possibly someone connected to him." A dull throb worked its way across my chest. Not sharp, not dramatic, just a slow confirmation that the ground was shifting again. The day kept moving even though my mind didn't. A routine inspection brought Ellen down to the maintenance corridor. She carried a clipboard rattling off items she needed to review. When she finished, she lingered for a beat. I heard something odd. She lowered her voice slightly. "A woman came by the clinic last week, asked about your recent surgery, said she was family. Her description matched your daughter-in-law. That landed harder than the attorney's call. Did she say why? No, just pressed about whether you were recovering well?" Ellen paused. "Be careful who you trust, Walter." Her warning settled into place with everything else. A picture forming piece by piece. A memory rose without effort last year. The hospital room blurred by medication, Brandon handing me a clipboard. "Just sign this real quick," he'd said, waving something about insurance coverage. I could barely sit upright. The pen shook in my hand. Whatever he put in front of me, I signed. Back then, it felt harmless. Now it felt like a door I'd opened without knowing what was behind it. Leaving the corridor, I stepped into the main hallway. Students passed by carrying backpacks and half-finished conversations. None of them mattered to the thoughts pressing in from all sides. My phone buzzed again. A long message from Brandon appeared, each sentence crafted to cast him as the wounded party. "I'm hurt you don't trust me anymore. I've done everything I can to keep the family together. You make me feel like I'm never good enough." A pattern I knew well: pain as a tool, guilt as a leash. Scrolling through it felt like walking into a familiar trap, one I'd stepped into too many times. Not responding became the only choice that didn't drag me backward. 2 minutes later, another notification arrived, a social media post from him. "Some people don't appreciate what you do for them. Sad it's your own parent." Dozens of comments followed, most from his in-laws. They speculated freely, none of them knowing me in any real way. The more they talked, the clearer Brandon's strategy became. Shift the story. Control the narrative. Leave me scrambling in the shadows while he played the victim. It wasn't anger that rose in me. It was clarity. Something old broke open, exposing how long I'd excused things I should have addressed years earlier. Marvin stepped out of his office across the hall as I passed. He didn't say much, just rested a hand on the doorframe. "You good?" His tone held no judgment. "Working on it," I answered. He nodded once. "Make sure you protect yourself." Simple words, but they turned something solid in me. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. This wasn't about Turkey, or misunderstandings, or holiday tension. It had crossed into territory where the law, not emotion, set the boundaries. I walked back to the maintenance office and shut the door. The attorney's number sat near the top of my call list. One tap connected us again. "I want to update my documents," I told him. "All of them. And I need instructions to revoke every authorization tied to the old estate plan." He didn't sound surprised. "I'll prepare the list. You'll need to gather your records and send them over. Email the instructions." When the call ended, I sat for a moment not to think, but to let the decision settle into place. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like maintenance, a repair that had waited too long. My phone buzzed once more. Brandon again. "Why are you shutting me out? What did I do to deserve this?" The message ended with a plea designed to tug at the same wound he'd used for years. The response he wanted would never come. A sheet of paper slid from the printer in the corner, the email from the attorney printed automatically because I'd set the machine to do that with any legal correspondence. I picked it up, scanned the items, deeds, account statements, healthcare directives, insurance policies. A comprehensive list longer than I remembered owning. The house stayed still when I got home. My focus stayed fixed on the list in my pocket. No drifting. No replaying old arguments. The workroom desk held what I needed, so the folders came out in a single motion. Receipts, emails, agreements, the flash drive. Everything landed in a clean row. Sorting used to feel tedious. Not tonight. Each page slid into a structure with purpose. Stacks labeled, dates verified. A new folder on my laptop mirrored the physical binder. Reeves' primary records. Password set. Written down. Stored away. The printer ran non-stop until the ream thinned. Digital files can vanish. Paper doesn't. No anger. No disappointment swelling up. Precision took their place. Each section rebuilt something I'd let slip for years. Midway through the email chain, a notification blinked, attempted login from an unknown device. Access blocked. Screenshot taken. Filed. While reaching for estate papers, headlights washed across the front room. A car idled, long enough to be noticed. When I stepped onto the porch, it eased down the street without rush. Plate unfamiliar. I wrote it down. 10 minutes later, another text from an unknown number. "Stop now. Not worth the trouble. No explanation. Just pressure." It joined the archive. My pulse stayed steady. Each oddity turned into one more timestamp in a growing ledger. Panic solves nothing. Documentation solves plenty. Brandon's name appeared next. Video call. Declining would only invite more calls, so I answered and set the phone on the desk. He opened with a smile stretched too far. "Hey, Dad. Just checking in. Want to clear the air? Feels like there's been confusion." He talked in circles, dressed concern in soft phrases, tried to steer the conversation toward whatever he thought I'd reveal. Eventually, he asked, "Have you been reviewing old documents someone mentioned you were calling around?" Handling some paperwork, I replied. "What kind? Personal?" He masked irritation poorly. "I'm trying to help here. I heard you. I'm busy." The call ended there. Returning to the binder felt like stepping back onto level ground. Facts don't plead. They don't maneuver. They hold. The attorney emailed the next steps. New will revoke outdated authorizations, reclaim every line where my name sat exposed. A checklist followed. Most items already sat in front of me. A pen waited beside the binder. Its weight felt right. Before signing, I read each clause in the draft. Clean. Tight. No openings for misuse. The pen hovered briefly above the signature line, not from doubt, but from wanting the moment to settle with full clarity. Years of guilt and leniency had carried me here. Then I signed. The morning opened with a bank alert. Failed login attempt. The old joint account, locked days ago. Someone still trying to use permissions that no longer existed. The timestamp sat far too early to be a mistake. A second alert arrived while I tightened a loose shelf bracket in the cafeteria storage room. Same account, same denial. Someone was pushing hard. By mid-morning, the school office forwarded an email sent to administration. No name attached. The message accused me of financial misconduct within the family and suggested the district review my integrity. Not an inquiry. A smear. The principal found me later. Probably nonsense, he said, but we have to document it. Of course, no excess energy spent on shadows. During lunch, Ellen approached with a pace that signaled urgency. "Your son's here," she said. "West Lot." Looked like he was searching for someone. Not judgment. Warning. Walking out to the courtyard behind the gym felt controlled, almost quiet in its own way. The sharp weather helped. Brandon stood near the fence, shoulders tight. He spotted me and closed the distance. "Why aren't you answering?" "You're freezing me out." "For what? I'm not discussing this here." "You owe me a conversation," he pushed. "People are talking. You're making me look guilty." My voice stayed even. "From today on, everything stays where it belongs." His expression hardened. "You think I don't know what you're doing?" "Calling lawyers, digging through old files I know about the authorization you signed last year. That detail told me exactly how close he'd been to those documents." "Careful," I said. "You're showing more than you think." A tiny shift ran through him. Shoulders drawn up, eyes too quick. "I'm your son. You're supposed to help me. I have helped you. For years. Things are changing." I turned and walked back inside. His words followed, but none of them slowed me. The afternoon broke into fragments. A custodian asked if everything was fine. A teacher mentioned someone pacing the lot. Small echoes of a larger pattern. At 3, my phone buzzed. The attorney sent scanned documents. One line stood out, signature inconsistent with primary exemplar. A withdrawal from last year. My name used. Not by me. That ended any final piece of hesitation. I clocked out early, grabbed my jacket, and headed for the truck. The drive to the law office moved quickly. Red lights only sharpened my focus. The elevator to the 5th floor offered a brief breath. The attorney greeted me with a prepared folder. "Everything's ready. Once you sign, we trigger full revocation and notify every institution. Proceed." He walked me through each page. Deed protections, beneficiary updates, emergency directives, account controls, clean, contained, mine alone. At the final document, he tapped the line. "This revokes all previous authorizations." The pen moved without pause. Clean, steady ink. When the last page was complete, he gathered the stack. "We'll file these immediately." The weeks leading towards the final meeting carried a steady weight. Nothing chaotic anymore, only a truth settling into its shape. Years of guilt from losing my wife had carved out spaces in me I hadn't noticed. I'd let Brandon fill those spaces with excuses, needs, demands, and the idea that giving in somehow honored the family we lost. Seeing it clearly didn't sting. It just clarified the cost of trying to make up for something no one could fix. At the bank, the manager recognized me from my earlier visit and led me to a desk in the back. Her tone stayed professional while she reviewed the documents. "These forms revoke all prior authorizations. Once signed, only you can approve transactions related to this account." "That's what I want," I said. She walked me through the final confirmation. A couple of transactions flagged as suspicious appeared on the screen. small amounts withdrawn over the past year. Each one carried an access path tied to a permission Brandon should never have had. Reporting them didn't feel vindictive, just necessary. After signing, she offered a brief nod. "Everything is secure now." Leaving the branch brought a steady exhale. Not relief, just the completion of something long overdue. The attorney's office contacted me later that week. "Your updated will is finalized," he said. "Brandon has been removed from all beneficiary listings. You'll receive certified copies for your records." No triumph rose in me at that. His removal wasn't punishment, it was correction. A line I should have drawn years earlier. Arranging the family meeting took only one phone call. The community center near the high school had a small room available. Neutral ground, no photographs on the walls, no sentimental ties, just table chairs and space to speak without shouting. Brandon walked in with two of his in-laws. Their expressions held confidence, maybe expecting a negotiation. His wife hovered near the door, unsure whether to sit. I didn't offer a greeting. A stack of folders rested in front of me. When everyone settled, I opened the top file and slid each document across the table. Copies of the will receipts, bank statements, the log of unauthorized attempts, and summaries from the attorney. Brandon skimmed the pages at first, then read them again, slower, face-draining of certainty. He reached the section detailing the forged request from last year and stopped moving entirely. His mother-in-law leaned toward him, as if prepared to rescue his narrative, but one look at the evidence made her sit back. "What is all this?" Brandon whispered. "Everything you did, I answered. Everything I allowed. That ends today." He swallowed hard, trying to recover. "Dad, you misunderstood. I never meant I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice, didn't offer him the chance to twist anything. The documents speak for themselves." His wife shifted away from him. His father-in-law looked down at the table. One by one, they withdrew from his side, unwilling to tie themselves to what they saw written in black and white. "You blindsided me," Brandon said, though the accusation held no force. "No," I replied. "You did that to yourself." No shouting followed, no pleading. Just a long silence filled with the weight of consequences finally landing where they belonged. I stood and gathered the remaining folders. "We're finished here." Leaving the room before anyone responded felt natural. The door gave a soft click behind me and the hallway stretched empty ahead. Walking to the parking lot, a lightness crept through me, not joy, not victory, just space where burden used to sit. Each step moved easier than the one before it. The following weeks unfolded without spectacle. I packed slowly, choosing what to keep and what to donate. A smaller apartment in Selwood opened up simple, affordable enough. Moving there didn't feel like starting over. More like returning to a size of life that fit. Work at the school shifted to part-time. Mornings spent repairing lockers or tightening bolts moved at a gentler rhythm. Afternoons opened again, leaving room for the woodworking tools I had boxed up years earlier. The scent of cut lumber and shavings brought back something quiet but steady, something I didn't realize I'd missed. One late afternoon, I unpacked the old toolbox, its hinges stiff, its handles worn smooth by years of use. Setting it on the shelf in my new workspace, I let my hand rest there for a moment. No speech formed, no lesson, no reflection chasing its own tail. Just the box settling in its place, the room steady around it, and a life trimmed back to the boundaries it should have had all along.